Maria hadn't planned on snooping through Greg's phone. In fact, she'd always prided herself on being a trusting wife. But when his phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen counter while he was out jogging, the screen lit up with a name she didn't recognize. Sassy Sue, 1987. The message preview read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for round two." Maria blinked. Maybe it was a prank? Maybe Greg was helping someone with relationship advice? But as her curiosity gnawed at her, she picked up the phone and unlocked it with his annoyingly simple passcode 1234. "Greg," she muttered, shaking her head. Couldn't even be creative about that. Her casual disbelief turned to horror as she scrolled through an avalanche of messages, pictures, and videos. There was Sassy Sue, Fun Fiona, Lusty Lauren, and a few others whose nicknames she couldn't bring herself to read out loud. Each one seemed to think they were Greg's one and only. Maria sat down, her hands trembling, not with sadness, but with the fury of a woman who realized she'd been played like a fiddle. The front door opened, and Greg strolled in, sweaty and grinning. "Hey, babe, what's for breakfast?" Maria plastered on her best fake smile, sliding the phone back onto the counter. "Oh, just the usual. Eggs, toast, and a side of disappointment." Greg paused mid-stretch. "What's that supposed to mean?" Maria shrugged, her smile widening. "Nothing, dear. Go shower. You stink." As Greg disappeared into the bathroom, humming off key, Maria stared at the phone again. She could have confronted him right there, hurled accusations, and let her anger boil over. But where was the fun in that? No, Greg didn't deserve her tears. What he deserved was consequences. A slow, simmering stew of confusion, guilt, and fear. And Maria, as it turned out, was an excellent cook. When Greg emerged, freshly showered and oblivious, Maria was already seated at the dining table, sipping her coffee. "I was thinking we should do something special this weekend," she said sweetly. Greg grinned. "Yeah? What do you have in mind?" "Oh, you know?" Maria leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with a mischief he didn't notice. "A little adventure, some surprises, maybe invite some new friends over." Greg raised an eyebrow, but laughed it off. "Sure, babe, whatever makes you happy." "Oh, don't worry," Maria said softly, sipping her coffee. "I'll make sure it's unforgettable." As Greg left for work, Maria pulled out her laptop, her mind already racing with ideas. She wasn't just going to let him off the hook. This wasn't going to be some tearful confrontation. Greg wanted excitement in his life? Well, she was about to give him the thrill of a lifetime, one he'd never forget. With a wicked grin, Maria opened a blank browser tab. "Let's get to work," she said to herself, fingers flying across the keyboard. Maria's fingers danced across the keyboard as she created her alter ego. She named her Monica Sunshine, a name that exuded charm and allure, the kind of person Greg's girlfriends would trust immediately. Monica's profile picture was a stock photo of a smiling brunette with perfect teeth and just enough mystery in her eyes to make people curious. The bio was simple but effective. Life's too short not to share it with someone special. Maria smirked, sipping her coffee as she admired her handiwork. "Let's see how loyal your little fan club really is, Greg." She started by friending Sassy Sue 1987. Within minutes, the request was accepted, and Sue sent a friendly message. "Hi there. Do we know each other?" "Oh, I think we have a mutual connection. You know Greg, right?" "Greg who?" "Greg Martin. Tall, brown hair, dimples when he smiles. Amazing with words and his hands." Maria felt a thrill run through her as she typed the last message. She hit send and waited. The three dots indicating Sue was typing appeared almost instantly. "Wait, are you his sister or something?" "Not exactly. Let's just say Greg and I have spent some very special evenings together." The response came fast. "WTF? He told me he's single." Maria chuckled darkly. "Oh, honey, you're just the opening act," she muttered to herself. Over the next few days, Monica Sunshine befriended all of Greg's girlfriends. Each interaction followed a similar pattern. Maria would drop just enough hints to spark curiosity and jealousy, letting the women piece together the puzzle themselves. The more she shared, the more the women began talking to each other. One evening, Maria noticed her phone buzzing nonstop. She opened a group chat one of the women had created, aptly titled Greg's Lies. "He told me he wanted to take me to Paris next month. What about you guys?" "He said we'd go to the Bahamas. Is he a travel agent or just full of BS?" can't believe this. He said he was falling for me. Monades, I hate to say it, but Greg has been very busy. Maybe we should all meet and talk about this in person? The group chat exploded with agreements, and Maria leaned back in her chair, satisfied. At home, Greg remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. One night, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Maria casually brought up the idea of a dinner party. I think we should invite some new people over, she said, her voice sweet as honey. Greg barely looked up from his phone. Sure, babe. Whatever you want. Maria's lips twitched with a suppressed grin. Oh, I'll make sure it's a night to remember. Greg glanced at her, finally noticing the odd tone. You feeling okay? Better than ever, Maria replied, turning back to the screen. Just excited for what's to come. That night, after Greg fell asleep, Maria used his phone to send invitations to his girlfriends. The message was simple. Hey, beautiful. I've been thinking a lot about us. Let's meet at my place Friday night at 7. Can't wait to see you. Greg. Maria sent the message to each woman, then deleted the evidence. Closing his phone, she whispered, You wanted excitement, Greg? You're about to get it. Friday came faster than expected. Maria spent the day preparing, setting the table with candles and fine china. She even cooked Greg's favorite dish, beef stroganoff, adding an extra touch of irony to the evening. When the doorbell rang at 7:01, Greg looked confused. Are we expecting someone? Maria smiled innocently. You could say that. Why don't you get the door? Greg opened it to find Sassy Sue standing there, her arms crossed and a scowl on her face. Greg, we need to talk. Before he could respond, the bell rang again, then again, and again. One by one, the women filed in, each looking more furious than the last. Greg's face turned pale as Maria poured herself a glass of wine and sat down at the head of the table. Ladies, she said, raising her glass, welcome to the truth. Greg stammered. Maria, what the hell is going on? Oh, don't mind me, she said, taking a sip. I'm just here to watch the show. The living room erupted into chaos as the women began confronting Greg, their voices overlapping in a symphony of rage. Maria leaned back, savoring every second of the unfolding drama. This was only the beginning, and Maria knew it was going to be one unforgettable night. The scene in the living room was pure chaos. Greg stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water as the women closed in on him. Sassy Sue was the loudest, pointing her perfectly manicured finger in his face. You told me I was the only one, she shouted, her voice echoing through the house. Same here. Fun Fiona chimed in, glaring daggers at him. Lusty Lauren crossed her arms, shaking her head in disbelief. You said you wanted to introduce me to your mom. What was that? A joke? Greg held up his hands defensively. Ladies, please, I can explain. Oh, I'd love to hear this, Maria interjected from her spot at the dining table. She swirled her wine glass lazily, a smirk playing on her lips. Go ahead, Greg. Explain. Greg shot her a panicked look. Maria, can we talk in private for a second? Maria leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. Oh, Greg, why keep secrets? It seems like you've been doing that enough already. The women all turned to him, their arms crossed, their faces a mixture of anger and betrayal. Greg tugged at his collar, his voice cracking. Look, this is just a big misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Sassy Sue's voice rose an octave. You've been dating all of us at the same time, Greg. How is that a misunderstanding? Fun Fiona stepped closer, waving her phone. And what about this? You're the only one who makes me happy. Really, Greg? You sent the same message to all of us, didn't you? Greg's face was now a bright shade of crimson. Okay. I screwed up, all right, but let's not blow this out of proportion. Maria couldn't hold back her laugh any longer. Out of proportion? Greg, this is the definition of proportion. You've created your own little harem, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. Why are you even here, Maria? Greg snapped, his frustration boiling over. This has nothing to do with you. Maria's eyebrows shot up. Oh, sweetie, it has everything to do with me. I'm your wife, remember? Or has your memory been as selective as your morals? The room went silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling in. Lusty Lauren turned to Greg, her expression twisting into one of disgust. Wait, you're married? Greg's stammering reached new heights. Well, technically. Technically. All three women shouted in unison. Maria stood up, raising her glass. Ladies, I think it's time we celebrate something. To Greg, our very own Casanova, may his lies catch up with him. one woman at a time. The women raised their imaginary glasses, the sarcasm in their gestures cutting like knives. Greg buried his face in his hands, muttering, "This can't be happening." "Oh, it's happening," Maria said cheerfully. "And you know what, Greg? This is just the beginning." As the night wore on, Maria let the women have their say, airing every grievance and uncovering every lie. Greg looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. By the time the last woman stormed out, slamming the door behind her, the house was eerily quiet. Maria picked up the empty wine bottle and walked over to Greg, who was slumped on the couch like a deflated balloon. She tilted her head, feigning concern. "Rough night?" Greg didn't answer. Maria patted his shoulder. "Well, I'm off to bed. You can sleep on the couch. Oh, and Greg, don't forget to lock the door. You wouldn't want any of your friends coming back for an encore." With that, she walked upstairs, leaving Greg to sit in the wreckage of his carefully constructed lies. For Maria, the night had been a masterpiece, a perfectly orchestrated symphony of revenge. And as she slipped under the covers, she couldn't help but smile. This was only the first act. The next morning, Greg woke up on the couch with a pounding headache and a deep sense of dread. The events of the previous night played back in his mind like a bad movie he couldn't stop watching. The yelling, the accusations, Maria's chilling calm, he had no idea how to fix it. Maria, however, was already up, sipping her coffee at the kitchen table. She looked radiant, dressed in a crisp blouse and jeans, her hair perfectly styled. She flipped through a magazine, humming softly, as if the storm of the previous night had been nothing more than a passing drizzle. Greg shuffled into the kitchen, scratching the back of his neck. "Morning?" he mumbled. "Good morning," Maria chirped. "Sleep well?" He winced at her cheerfulness. "Maria, we need to talk." "Oh, I agree," she said, setting down her coffee cup. "But first, let me ask you something. Do you even remember what it was like when we first met?" Greg blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, of course. You were wearing that red dress at the bar." Maria held up a hand, cutting him off. "And I thought you were charming. Funny. Honest." She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "Boy, was I wrong." "Maria, come on," Greg said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know I messed up, but can we just work this out?" She raised an eyebrow. "Work this out? You're lucky I didn't film last night and upload it to YouTube. I'm sure the title Greg the Casanova Gets Busted would have gone viral." Greg ran a hand through his hair, his frustration bubbling over. "I get it, okay? I screwed up. But I love you, Maria. You're my wife." Maria's laughter was sharp and cold. "Oh, now I'm your wife? Funny, you didn't seem to remember that when you were playing Romeo with your little fan club." She stood up, walking over to the counter where a stack of papers rested. Greg frowned. "What's that?" She slid the stack across the table toward him. "Divorce papers, signed and ready to go." Greg's jaw dropped. "Maria, you're not serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious." Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "You see, Greg, last night wasn't just about exposing you to those women. It was about exposing you to yourself. You think you can lie and cheat and just keep coasting through life? Not anymore." He stared at the papers, his hands trembling. "Maria, please, don't do this. I can change." Maria leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You had plenty of chances to change, Greg, and every single time, you chose yourself. Now, I'm choosing me." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Greg jumped up, his voice desperate. "Where are you going?" Maria turned, her hand on the doorknob. "Oh, don't worry about me. I've got a meeting with a lawyer and lunch with a real estate agent. You see, Greg, I'm not just leaving you. I'm upgrading my life." Before he could respond, she stepped out, leaving him standing there, the weight of his mistakes crushing down on him. Over the next few weeks, Maria's life transformed. She moved into a beautiful new apartment overlooking the city, joined a book club, and even started taking salsa dancing lessons. Her friends marveled at her glow, and Maria reveled in the freedom she hadn't realized she'd been missing. As for Greg, his life fell apart in record time. His reputation at work took a hit after rumors of his escapades spread, and his girlfriends wanted nothing more to do with him. He tried calling Maria a few times, leaving messages begging for forgiveness, but she never responded. One evening, as Maria danced under the twinkling lights of a salsa studio, her instructor twirled her around and said, "You've got a fire in you, Maria. Whatever you've been through, it looks like you've come out stronger." Maria smiled, her heart light. You have no idea. Because in the end, revenge wasn't just about getting even. For Maria, it was about rediscovering herself. And that was the sweetest victory of all.